Hello, Professor. Good morning. I have a question, if it's possible, please, before we start.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I tried to work on plan view, but for some reason, when I
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to talk a little bit about class because this is the last official week of instruction. And so this week we're actually really only having one major lecture, and that's today. I'm still debating what I'm going to talk about on Wednesday and if I decide to talk about anything. Some of it will be dependent on how many questions I get today and kind of going forward. So I may do a mini lecture, I may not. I haven't decided on Wednesday yet. But that being said, today's exercise 228 will be the last one of the semester. So I'm not going to give you a 229. You're not going to have anything else due until the final. So you'll have 228 from today. That'll be due on Sunday. And then you'll have the final that's due on Monday. So just keep that in mind. Wednesday, we'll spend the bulk of the time solving problems. And I would suspect that after lecture today, the bulk of the time during the check-ins this week will be solving problems. So figuring out what's wrong, why is something not rendering, etc. On Monday of next week, so remember, everything's due at midnight on Monday. On Monday of next week, I won't have a formal lecture, but I will be here from the 11 start time through 2, and it'll be just an open lab. So there's no mandatory requirement for you to come, but it will be like left open so you can come at any point during that time and get help, or stick around for the whole time and continue to get help depending on availability and whatever. Obviously, I'll try to get to everybody and make sure that you get the help that you need kind of finishing these things up. So hopefully most of what you've been working on is starting to get resolved, and it's really about getting those final renderings kind of set up and ending up with a good final product. In terms of today, what we're going to talk about is creating a line section drawing. So we already went through sectional perspectives and cutting a section through the building. We talked about doing the split and all of that. Today, we're going to focus on creating the line section. So it's important. We're going to be reviewing a lot of the stuff we did last class when we created the plan. This time, we're going to do it just switching the orientation, so it'll be vertical. And again, this is all about getting high quality line drawings out of your 3D model. So you've spent all this time working on getting a good quality 3D model. Why not get good quality line drawings out of that 3D model for your final presentations? So that's what we're going to work on today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Perfect. And then give me a second to get organized. Excellent. All right. So I went ahead and this time I opened up my ocean file, and I'm going to work on that to create this section view. As we start to kind of establish this and get this set up, remember the first thing we want to do is to do a save as, so that we're saving our work, and when we start to destroy it by creating the section, we're not permanently destroying our work. And so I did do a save as. You can see the last command I did was a save as, and so now I can start to actually work on it. So I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm going to go ahead and establish the plane that runs all the way through my building. Now, I'm not going to be seeing the ocean as part of this view, so I could go ahead and turn that off. So I can come over here into my ocean block, and we can turn that one off. I'm going to see a little bit of terrain, but it makes it a little bit easier to work with if I've gone ahead and I've turned that off. So now I need to decide, what am I going to cut a section through? And of course, I could cut a section through these two stacked rooms looking toward the back here, or I could cut a section along here, maybe going through the stairs. I'm always a fan of, when you create sections, cutting where the stairs are, because it shows movement from one floor to the other. So I really like that as a section. So not to be repetitive with the sectional perspective that we did, but I think it's really the best sectional view of this building to show. By the way, sections are probably the most important architectural drawing that you can do in your presentation, because they fundamentally are a study of space and how we interact with the space of the building. So it's really important to be able to have a good high quality section to show. So first thing I need to do is I need to create a plane, a vertical plane that's bigger than my overall site. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create that vertical plane. So I'll come over to my planes And I'm going to choose this one, which is the vertical plane tool. I'll start outside of the site here, and I'll move across to this side. I want to make sure that it stays perfectly in line with my building. So I'm going to hold down Shift as I do this. That's just going to keep it orthogonal. And then we'll go ahead and drag it up to create that vertical plane. And then I need to go ahead and position it so that it goes through the building where I want it to go through the building. So I'll use the top view to do this. So let's go ahead and switch over into wireframe. Then we'll go ahead and move. I currently have no snaps turned on, which makes moving just a little bit easier. And we'll move it. And I want it to be cutting through the building somewhere in about there. So I'm cutting through my building here, I'm cutting through the stairs, and I'm cutting through this room as well. It's a pretty good setup. Let's make sure that the plane goes all the way through in this direction as well. So let's move this down so that it's going completely through the building. And we can zoom out in the top view and make sure it's larger than my overall building, which it's not, so I need to correct that. So let's scale 1D. Now I'm going to actually turn on the snaps here. We'll do end. And we want to make sure that that goes beyond my site. Perfect. So it's now officially beyond my site. Let's go ahead and create a new layer. And we'll call this layer section. And then we'll create a sub-layer for plane. And let's take this object and put it on that plane layer. Let's go ahead and change object layer. And now it's on that plane layer as well. So just as we did before, we can actually get a lot out of just using a V-Ray clipping plane to clip our building. So I'm going to set up a elevation view first, and I'll set it up in one of these side views so that we can kind of see it here. So this front view isn't, actually it's very close to what I want already. So let's zoom in here on my front view. Let's go ahead and double click to make it a little bit larger. I'm going to turn off that big plane for a second, and let's view this as a shaded. All right, so this looks pretty close to my elevation view. I can pan a little bit. Like that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and save this as my section view. So I'm going to come here and go to my set view named views, and I will call this line section. And I'll go ahead and say, okay, that means I can come back to this view. So let's leave that line section view down here, and then let's look in the perspective view up here as we start to establish this. So we'll turn back on my big sectional plane, and then let's go ahead and create that, that section. So I'm going to come over here to my V-Ray clipping plane, and we'll create a vertical clipping plane. And so we'll snap to one side, and then we'll snap to the top. And it should clip my overall drawing. We can turn off that plane. We should be able to see this rather nicely. If I did it correctly, right, it should cut through the stairs. That's what I want. I'm seeing the stairs laid out. I'm seeing my building laid out. Yeah, all of this looks pretty darn good. So let's see it in my side view here. So I may need to work in this view and reestablish that section again. Let's go ahead and erase that. Oops, sorry, that's AutoCAD. Delete. Let's turn on my plane. And let's do that section view one more time. So we'll go to the V-Ray clipping plane. Oops, sorry. I meant to do, actually in this view, it's going to be just corner to corner. Like that. There it is. And let's turn off this. And then let's view this once again in our, we go to set view and we'll go to line section. And it conveniently doesn't show it for me. How nice. Let's do, Yep, it's not going to do it. Okay, so I'm going to have to view it. I'm going to have to go back in and set it up manually again. So let's zoom out. Let me get rid of that. And we'll turn this one back on. One more time, sorry. V-Ray clipping plane. There and there. We'll turn off that. And we can zoom in on it. Zoom in a little bit more. Right about there. Yeah, that's pretty good. Let's go to pan. All right, and I'm going to resave this view. So we'll come in here to set view named views, and I'm going to save this again as the line section, and we'll say OK. Perfect. So I've gone ahead and I've created that. The section plane, it would be nice if it was on the no, of course it's on the site layer. I should have put it on its own layer. Actually, this should be V-Ray clipping plane. There we go, clipping plane. Let me zoom out for a second. And let's put this on the clipping plane layer. And I'm doing that just so it turns to black instead of turning to green. Okay, and let's zoom back in. We go to set view, line section, and there we are. So now we want to work on exporting this into our Make 2D and also exporting this as a JPEG, kind of as a background image. So let's start first with exporting this as a Make 2D. So to do that, I want to identify what the borders of this viewport really are. So let's come here and go to set camera, and I'm going to show the camera. And then we can see it in this view over here. There it is. So let's show this in wireframe mode so we're not blocked out. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a rectangle. And let me turn on my point snap. And we'll do a vertical. And I'll go from here to there. And I'll come down to right there. And that creates that rectangle. Then we're going to scale it. So I'll type in scale. It's a regular scale, not a scale 1D, from this corner, and we're going to do it 2 times. And now it fills up the whole viewport. I'm going to go ahead and change that onto its own layer here. We'll call this viewport rectangle. And I will right-click on it and say change object layer. And so now, when we come back in here to the line section view, at the very edges, there's just a little bit of a yellow line that goes around it, and that represents our overall view. So now it's time to do the Make 2D. So let me hit escape so that nothing's selected, and then I'll go ahead and type in Make 2D. Select objects to draw, it's going to be all. Selects everything. I'll press enter when I'm done. And we're going to do the view. And I'm not going to maintain source layers this time for ease of doing this. The rest of this all looks okay, so we'll go ahead and say okay. And remember that Make 2D that we just created is going to be visible in the top view. So there it is. And there's our viewport rectangle. So let's go ahead and trim that. And so we'll get rid of the extra lines here that don't really matter. Oops. And that just about does it right there. I'll hit enter to finish. I'm going to deselect everything and then just select the lines here. Looks like I didn't get the terrain lines, so I'm going to have to ungroup them, I think. So let's select them. Yeah, so let's go ahead. I'm going to select all of it. That, and then I'm going to deselect. Oh, it's not going to let me do that, is it? Nope. Good old remote desktop, right? So let me make sure I get all of the pieces here. Oops, that was the wrong piece. I'm going to go ahead and type ungroup. And I believe that now I'll be able to select everything, except for these. Let me ungroup again. And there we go. I got it all. So we'll go ahead and export this. Remember, we're going to export this to Illustrator. So I'll go to File and then Export Selected. I'm going to choose, instead of my Rhino model, I'm going to choose Adobe Illustrator. So it's a .ai, Adobe Illustrator. There we go. We're going to make sure that it goes into a folder for today. So let's go into live demonstrations on my OneDrive here. And I'm going to call this line section. And under my options, I want to make sure that I'm preserving the scale, and it's going to be 48:1. And that's 1/4 inch equals a foot. Say OK. And then here, we'll call this line section. And I'll go ahead and click on save. We'll say OK. And it's now exported that line drawing for me into Illustrator. OK, so I have that. That's good. That's the first step. And let's go back to my line section drawing. So I had this set up in the Arctic mode. So I went here and I came down to Arctic. You could try some of the other ones, like Artistic, for example. I just don't think it looks as good as the Arctic. Let's let it finish its update here. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Okay, hold on. I'm seeing some questions. Naomi. Yes, I cut this with a vertical plane. The section view here that I created, I actually did with the clipping plane. It's this tool here. We're going to get to the split in just a little bit. And then Brooke. Yes. So you're saying the reason I'm concerned with the physical scale when I do the export and doing the 48:1 is I'm maintaining scale, and I'm also giving myself the viewport boundary. So when I export this JPEG or I do a rendering of this, I'm going to end up with the same size and same aspect ratio, which lets them layer up easily rather than having to scale them after the fact. Okay, so I don't like the artistic view. I like the Arctic view. I think it looks better. But I want to make some edits to it. So let me go into Tools and then Options. And you guys have seen me do this before. And I'm going to change under View here. I'm going to open Display Modes, and I'm going to go to Arctic. And here, as I scroll down, I can choose to uncheck things like tangent edges, tangent seams, and then ultimately we're going to get to curves. And I can cause these to go away. It is still going to show these black lines that are the section cuts. So we're going to leave those on, and we're going to go ahead and say OK. And then I can export this view. So we'll go right here, and I'm going to go to Capture to File. And it's the line section view. I don't want the resolution to be set at the viewport. I want to go to Custom, but I want to lock the viewport aspect ratio. So I get the same ratio as my viewport here. And then I can bump up the size. So let's say this one is 3000 pixels. And we'll go ahead and say OK. Then it's going to capture this for me as a JPEG. So let's go into my folder. There's my line section. And we'll call this Arctic. And then I'll go ahead and click on save. And that'll save this view. So this is good. It gives me some background texture that I can use as part of my drawing. But I may want to do this a little bit more. I may want to improve this just a little bit more. So let's go back to my shaded mode for now. I'm going to double click to get out of the line section. I'm going to go back to this render 01 view. Now in this view, we'll go ahead and we'll delete that section, the V-Ray clipping plane. I'm going to show my plane here, and this is where I'm going to start to do the splitting. And the advantage here is that when I do the rendering, having split it and assigned a see-through material, the shadows inside the building are accurate to the real lighting conditions. And so this is definitely a step up in quality, but it takes a little bit of work to get it there. So we're going to work through those kind of the advanced method now. So what we've done first is kind of the preliminary method, and I'll put those together in Illustrator in just a little bit. And what I'm doing now is a little bit more of the advanced strategy. So let's go ahead and select the block references first, because I need to explode them before I can do a split. So I'm going to type SEL block instance. There it is. I'll hit enter. And it's selected all the block instances. I'll then go ahead and type explode. And remember, this is why we definitely want to do a save as, because you can look at my layer structure there, just became a giant mess. Because it just exploded all of those. So once this is done, I'll go ahead and deselect so that nothing's selected. And I'll type SEL block instance again. There's a few more. We'll explode those. I'll deselect so nothing's selected. SEL block instance. And there we go. No objects added to selection. So there's no more block instances anymore. Now it's time to actually perform the split. So sometimes this is easier to do in the top view. Sometimes you want to do it in the side view. We're going to go ahead and select everything. So let me back up here and we'll select everything. And we're going to include the terrain there. And we'll type in split. It's going to ask me for my cutting objects. That's going to be this plane. And then I'll go ahead and hit enter. Now this process takes a while because it's going to go through every one of those objects and split it using that plane. There will probably be some split failed messages. That's normal because not all of the objects intersect this plane. So we're going to let this have a little bit of time to work. And so I apologize for having to make you wait, but we do have to kind of wait for this to play itself out. All right, so it was able to split the object. That's good. And I'm going to go ahead and turn back off that large plane because I don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to look at this in the top view. And I've always found that working in the top view is generally the easiest when we're working with it. Sometimes you'll want to work in one of the other side views, but that just varies. Looks like I'm having some issues. I'm going to go ahead and save this just in case. All right, let's back up here. And as we look at my building, I should be able to select all of the objects that are on this front side. So we'll select going this way, right up to where that split occurred. And that should select everything on this side. But I want to make sure that my windows were not selected. So this is where I have to use my layer stack here, which is a little bit annoying. And I'm looking for my glass layers. So I'll come down here and I've got my glass railing. We need to turn that off. We'll come down here a little bit further. And this is window glass. We need to turn that one off. This one here is also window glass, and we'll turn that one off. And I'm pretty sure that that covers all of the glass that I have in this building. So once I have those turned off, then it's a matter of applying the see-through material to just this side of the building. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to my V-Ray materials. And I did, of course, preload everything. Let me go into my materials, and I don't think I have see-through loaded, so I'm going to have to go ahead and load it. And it is on my flash drive. And there's see-through. And we'll go ahead and open that. And that looks accurate. It may not be the most up-to-date one, but we'll go ahead and go with it and assume that it's going to work. If it doesn't work, we'll update it. I'm going to right-click on it and say apply. Oops, come on. Apply to selection. So that's going to apply all of this with that see-through material. So now that I have that applied with the see-through material, oh, I should do this part of the terrain as well. So let's go ahead and apply that. We'll right click and we'll go ahead and apply to selection. There we go. So now the see-through material is applied to that whole half. If we zoom in on our building, the other thing that I haven't quite resolved is the basically filling in below where my building is. So I may need to go through and do some of that filling. For right now, I'm going to leave it and we'll see what the end result looks like in the rendering. And it may be something that we fix in Photoshop after the fact. So let me double click there, and I'm going to move back to my line section view, which is right here. And so now if I were to render this, I'd end up getting the view as if the windows weren't here, or the windows were still here on the inside of the building. So let's go ahead and render it. And right now, if I were to render it, I get the full color view because the other half hasn't had a clay texture applied to it. So I probably should apply a clay texture to see it because I don't want a full color rendering. So let me double click. And remember, I used the top view and I selected everything on this side of the line. I need to select the opposite. So I'll come over here and I'll select everything on this side of the line, like that. And now this part needs to have a clay material applied to it. So I can't use, like I did in the elevation view, I can't use the override material function because then I would be overriding the see-through material as well. So that doesn't work. So I'm going to actually have to create a material for this. So let me click on the plus sign. We're going to go into materials. It's going to be a generic material. And I will call this clay. And then I'm going to change the color to just be white. You could do a light gray, but I think white will work. And then I'll right click and I will apply to selection. Now I still have all that glass turned off. And I think what I'm going to do is end up just leaving the glass off because it's not going to affect much of what my final rendering looks like. So now that I have that done, we'll go ahead and jump back to my line section in its full size, and we'll go into V-Ray. We're going to go into my settings, and we're going to make sure that my render output is set to match the viewport, which it is. Right now, I'll leave it at 1080, but if I wanted to do the full scale drawing, I might up this to like 3000, for example. I'm not worried about the autosave. We can turn that off for right now because I'm going to look at it. It should render pretty quickly. I have my sun on. I have my HDRI in the background. So let's go ahead and give it a test. So I'll go ahead and click on, let me save it first. And then we'll click on the teapot and perform the render. So it's going to take a little bit to get started. While that's doing that, I'm going to switch over into Illustrator and start to work with my lines drawings. So let me come over into Adobe Illustrator. We'll open that one up. Excellent. And we'll go ahead and open up that Illustrator file that I created. So let me go into my OneDrive. And this was our line section. And there it is. We'll go ahead and say open. And there it is. Let me press Control-0 so that we can see the whole thing. Actually, I need to Control- a bit. And we're going to adjust the artboard to fit this rectangle. And I'm going to do that by using the artboard tool right here. And then, oh, it's still loading. There we go. Come on, there we go. And now I can move this corner to line up there. And I can move this corner to line up right there. Perfect. So now my artboard's been set. I will press Control-0 again. We can see the whole drawing. And now I need to go through and make some corrections. So this green line here doesn't need to be there. So we can go ahead and delete that. It doesn't need to be here either. Delete. This line right there needs to be black because it's part of the terrain. So we'll go ahead and change the color to be black. That way we can at least see it. If we look at my layers, I have a hidden layer and I have a visible layer. It's a little bit more concise than previous. So let's take the hidden layers and let's move them to the bottom. There we go. And the visible layers are on top. I'm going to select the hidden layers. And actually, let's do a new parent layer here. We'll call this one hidden. And we'll drop each of these into that parent. And when I do that, it will allow me to select all the lines that are supposed to be hidden. We'll go into our properties. And this is where we're going to make some edits. So first thing, we'll change the color. So I'll double click on my stroke color and we'll make it kind of a medium gray, maybe something like that. We'll change my stroke thickness to 0.25. And then if I click on where it says stroke, I also want to turn on a dashed line. And we're going to do a 2-point by 2-point. It's a little bit finer of a dashed line. And then when we click off, those dashed lines should show up. So let's click off so that nothing's selected. Come on. There we go. And we can see all of those nice little hidden lines for us. Now we have to continue to kind of improve things. And this may involve deleting some pieces. So I could, for example, take that piece and delete it. I could take that piece and delete it. It's not really adding much. This isn't adding to our drawing, nor is that adding to our drawing. Or that piece right there. So we're just kind of fine tuning it. And then I need to go through and do a little bit more, right? So all of these blue lines and all of the black lines really, or the blue lines and the red lines should all be selected and changed in color. So we could select one of the red lines, for example, and then say select same stroke color. That'll select all the red lines. And then we could change them from being red to being black. Like that. Then we could select all the blue lines. I could go here. I could say select same stroke color. And those can be converted from blue also into black. There we go. And I think the last one was the purple. So I'll select one of the purples. We'll go to select, same stroke color, and we'll change the purples into black as well. Perfect. There's still some cleanup to do, like this piece here. We don't need that, so I can delete that. Come on. Starting to get slow on me here. There we go. We can get rid of that. We can get rid of this piece. We can get rid of this diagonal. Get rid of that piece. Get rid of that arc. We probably could fine tune this pool a little bit and get rid of some of the pool edges here. Just to kind of clean it up. And so all I'm doing right now is just deleting. I'm picking things and deleting them. This line needs to go away. That line needs to go away. This line needs to go away. So you could continue kind of working through and cleaning things up. While we're here, right, it's time to start bringing in that backdrop. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'll go to layers. And I'm going to make sure that this is on the very bottom so that my lines are on top, and we can rename this to be background. And then I could bring in, with this layer selected, I could bring in that Arctic view. So let me go to File and then Place. And there's our Arctic view. And I should be able to snap it right to that corner. It's obviously much, much bigger. So let me go Control minus to zoom out. There we go. And I'm going to resize this so that it fits. Remember, I don't want to skew it, so I'll hold down Shift to make sure it stays in proportion. And if I did it correctly, it should line up exactly on my viewport. I can then press Control-0, and we can see that as kind of a background to my line drawing, which gives a little bit of shadow and a little bit of texture. So it's not bad. There's some issues. So like these little underneath here, these regions are less than ideal. We're getting a little bit of an extra line here from the rendering, but it certainly doesn't look bad. And we may choose to do some filling. So we may fill in the parts that we've cut through. I'll show you that in just a little bit. In the meantime, let's jump back over into Rhino and see how that rendering's going. I really hope it's done something. So it's stuck trying to build hair because I left the grass turned on. So that's my mistake. So we'll see if I can stop the render and turn the grass off. Without it crashing. Come on. Working on it. All right, we'll let that keep working, and I'm going to come back to the Illustrator as we continue to work on it. So I was talking about filling in some of these lines. So that is something that you can do in Illustrator. So let's turn off the background. And I'm also going to turn off the hidden lines because we don't really need those for this purpose. Oh, the whole thing's working really slowly for me. Okay, so the hidden lines are turned off. Now I'm going to work with these two, and this is more advanced. So if you've worked in 135, then you know what I'm doing. If you've never worked in 135, don't worry if you're not there. But I want to show this to those students who have done 135 before, and that is that I can do a live paint of these two layers. So I can select everything. I'll press Control A to select everything, and I'll go up to Object, Live Paint, and then Make. That makes a live paint group. And then I can use the live paint bucket, which unfortunately isn't enabled by default. So if I click on these three dots here, I can turn on the live paint bucket right here, and I can drag it up into my toolbars. Alternatively, you can just press K to get it back. So if you press K, you'll get the live paint bucket tool. Now with the live paint bucket tool, I can come in here and I can actually paint in a particular color. So maybe if it'll let me change the color, right? I could paint in black. And then we'll come back to the live paint, and I should, come on, be able to fill in. Oh, it didn't stick. It's still white. Come on. And sometimes just so that I know that it is showing. Come on. Now we'll see if we can go ahead and do it. There we go. So we'll go ahead and fill in these regions. So that's the floor. We have these stairs to fill in. Oops. Control Z. I should really zoom in. Let me Control plus to zoom in a little bit. All I'm trying to identify here is the pieces that are solid, the pieces that need to be filled in. Control Z. You're going to make a few mistakes, so Control Z will be your friend here. All right. I need to fill that piece in and that piece in along with there. You can see that I'm missing part of my railing there. Whoops. That's not filled in, but let's see. The roof here, it would be filled in. And this would be filled in because we've cut through that. That's kind of already dark, so I'm not going to worry about filling that in. This would be filled in there. And that looks pretty decent. However, it would be nice to fill in this region. And in this scenario, let me press Control 0. I don't have a border curve that's going to let me fill that one in. So we may need to do a little bit of modifications. So I'm going to go ahead and come back to my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a rectangle. It's over the whole piece. I'm going to flip it so that it has just that. And then we're going to send it to the back. So let me right click and say arrange, and we'll send to back. And then we're going to select, okay, we'll select everything. There we go. And I'm going to go back into my object. I'm going to go back to live paint, and we're going to merge now that I have that border. And we should be able to fill in down here now. There we go. So I can fill in that part of the region as well. I just needed a border to be able to fill that in. So what I've been able to do is I've filled in that part of the line drawing. And then I can go in and select, I'm using the white arrow here. I'll select one of those regions, and I will then expand the live paint. Why isn't it not letting me? You select it here, and we're going to click on expand. That breaks it apart. And then let's go ahead and select the fill. There it is. I'll go to select same fill color. That selects all the black. Then I can right click and go to arrange. And I can go to send to back. And let's go ahead and make a new layer for my fill. And I'm going to move those objects onto the fill layer and then move them below. We'll move them back down so that they're just above the background. It looks like what happened is that when I did the live paint, my objects on those layers changed to being transparent. So if we select them, let's see here. Come on. Did I accidentally move them all? I moved the fill in the wrong spot. Come on. And now it's basically crashing out on me. All right, so it appears that my line drawing, see, you can see my hidden lines there, but the rest of my lines are not black anymore, or I accidentally moved them. So let's go ahead and select all, but I'm going to turn off my hidden lines, and let's see if we can change the fill color, or excuse me, the stroke color to be black. See if they show back up. So pleasant when things don't do what you want them to do. Well, I don't know how I managed to get rid of all of those. I may have to open it again. So see, even things go wrong for me. So the good news is we have that original export, so I can bring it back. Let's check while we're waiting. Let's go back to my V-Ray here, and let's see if we can get a new rendering out. So like I said, I accidentally had left on my fur. So let's make sure we're turning off the fur. There we go. And let's try a new render of our view. Much better, much better. So now that I've corrected that problem, we're getting this out much quicker, and you can kind of see that. We'll let that progress for a bit. Let me go back and fix that Illustrator file because I managed to delete all of those, unless I grouped them all together. No, Okay, so I'm going to go to File, and then we'll just place the original line section on top. Okay, how about we open it? We go to File and then Open. Yep, we want to open it again. Oh, come on. Well, so much for my high quality live paint here. I'm going to go ahead and back up. Maybe that's the best strategy. Okay. What I should have done, again, there we go. Let's go ahead and let me go back to my fill. We'll fill in these last couple of regions. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to Properties, and I'm going to expand. And maybe that's where it happened. Let me undo, Control Z. And instead of doing the expand, I'm just going to leave it. No, it really doesn't like it, does it? I'm going to figure out why this happened. Okay, well, let me undo that. Let me go back. It happened after I did the merge. So let's get back to here. And we'll stop. No, it did it. All right, let's try that point. No, it's still. So what I should have done, and I got lazy, is I didn't have to work my way all the way back through. I didn't make a duplicate of the lines before I did the live paint, which is always what you should do. So I apologize that you're going to have to watch me deal with this problem, but sometimes even I make mistakes, right? So let's go back one more. And let's back up one more. So it's no longer a live paint group. Yeah, okay, so it's not a live paint group. So I should have duplicated these layers before I even began. So I'm going to select the first one, and we'll go ahead and duplicate the layer. And then I'll take the second one right here, and we're going to duplicate that one. There we go. And the advantage here is that you can turn the first two off, and it doesn't affect anything. So we'll leave the next two on. Hold on, I think. There we go. Okay, so now we can select those two. And we can go back to the live paint. So I'll go to Object, Live Paint, Make. Why is it not letting me do it? Oh, I love it when things don't work out for me. Control 0. And of course, I'm running out of time too, which is always fun. Okay, let's turn this one off. Let's figure it out. So we need two sets. There we are. Select all. Object. Nope, this should be turned off. Select all. Object, Live Paint, Make. And there we go. Fill it with black. All right, that. All right, perfect. So I've got those that filled in. I'm going to come over to my properties, and we'll go ahead and click on Expand. That breaks it apart. And what I needed was that large rectangle around the outside. So let's bring that back. And we're going to flip that so that it has that. We're going to go ahead and select everything. So Control A again, and we'll go to Object, Live Paint, Make. And then we can go back to our Live Paint tool, and I should be able to fill in these pieces as well. That's what ultimately I was trying to do. Perfect. So then we can come over here and we can expand it again. And we should, it's all said and done, still have the lines. So now I can turn on the hidden. And we're seeing those in there. And I can turn on the background. And we're now getting a little bit of shadow. And we're seeing this as a full section view. Now, if my rendering is done, and I know I'm running out of time, so bear with me for just a second longer. If I come back to my rendering, it's still processing, but you can see that I'm getting the view that has the light as it's coming through and passing through the stairs, etc. So this is ultimately a much better rendering and material to use as your backdrop. So that you guys don't have to sit here, I will let this finish out on my own time, and then I can put it together. But ultimately, we're looking for a line section like this, or the one that uses the other as a backdrop. Okay. So I know it's a lot of work and there was a lot of little steps. Remember, even if you end up without filling it in, right? If we end up with just this, that's a reasonable, sorry, not that one, the one with the lines on it. That's a reasonable end product, okay? This is a set of lines. I'm gonna have to get rid of that. That's why they're showing up as white. All right, so I know this is a lot to take in, but this is the creating the line section from your view. I'd like you guys to attempt that today. That being said, that's the last of the exercises. So 228 is the last of the exercises for this class. You're now moving forward into just getting stuff ready for your final assignment, which is due on Monday. If you have a complicated schedule where you might have a night final to do on Monday night or whatever, if you send me an email, and I've had a number of students who've already sent me an email, if you want an extension or you want to adjust the due date, I need you to send me an email and we can adjust that due date up until Friday of finals week. So I'm willing to accept things. But if you're going to turn something in late, you have to send me an email telling me you're going to turn something in late. Okay? So hopefully that's clear. We'll move into our check-ins and we'll start problem solving. I know a number of you already have problems, so we want to make sure that we get those solved today as well.